Hello there, it's just turned 3 p.m. here in the Russian capital. You're watching RT International. I'm Nikki Aaron. We start with breaking news. The Russian Ministry of Defense has announced within the last hour it will be sending anti-mining experts and military robots to help demine the ancient Syrian city of Palmyra. Assad's military forces have already started the process. These are the latest pictures from Palmyra showing the huge scale of destruction caused by Islamic State militants. ISIL took control of the city at the start of last summer. There are fears Islamic State fighters have booby-trapped both residential and historical areas while retreating from the liberated city. The city lies at a strategic crossroad in central Syria, halfway between Damascus and Islamic State's de facto capital, Raqqa. By recapturing Palmyra, the Syrian army now has a vital launching point for future offensives. In these aerial shots, you can see the Greco-Roman landmarks to the city's southwest, many of which have been reduced to rubble by ISIL over the past 10 months. For more on this now, I'm joined live in the studio by RT's William Whiteman. Will, thanks for coming in. Now, how exactly will Russia help the Syrian forces?
Well, the Syrian forces are already underway trying to demine Palmyra after numerous explosive devices have been left all over the historical site and both the city itself. But Russia has pledged to send in both explosive or demining experts and as well as that robots which are used to to detonate explosives which have been left in the ruins or in alleged buildings. Obviously, ISIL has a long history of leaving a large number of booby traps and other such explosives all over areas it has just held occupied. So this is a very, very serious task which must be undertaken. It should be noted that the Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke to UNESCO today and pledged his support in removing explosive devices from Palmyra. And as well as that, Russia has invited all members of the international community in demining the area, obviously because it is such a historically important site.
OK, well, thanks for bringing us up to date on that. RT's William Whiteman live in the studio now.
Thank you.
Earlier, we talked to locally based journalist Allah Ibrahim, who was in Palmyra during the intense fighting.
I can say that the few days I spent with the army gave me insight onto two major facts. The first fact is that the Syrian army, after the cessation of hostilities, was able to reallocate forces from one battle to another. I mean, taking forces from across the country and sending them as reinforcement to Palmyra without undermining its ability to hold other fronts, and that is because of the recent cessation of hostilities. The other fact that I was surprised by, not surprised actually, but very intrigued by, is that the Russian assistance that the Russian Air Force is providing for the Syrian army is still going on, and maybe at a higher pace than it was before the announcement of the withdrawal of the major force. And I think this explains why the radical group was caught off guard. The major question that everyone is asking right now: how can the Syrian government afford to reconstruct the archaeological site of Palmyra? And I have been speaking with Mamoun Abdelkarim, who is the director of museums in Syria and who will be in charge of the reconstruction process, and he told me that they have the data necessary. Also, we have to bear in mind that we cannot assess the scale of danger that ISIL inflicted of the city until the demining process is over. ISIL has planted hundreds of explosive devices across the city, and as the Syrian army continues to demine and defuse these explosive devices, we're hoping that none of these explosive devices would go off.
For the Syrian army, this development is not only a strategic victory, but a symbolic one. The military says this success proves the Syrian army is capable of fighting Islamic State in the country without the presence of any foreign force on the ground. After the siege of Palmyra, soldiers did not hold back in expressing their feelings.
النقاط الأمامية واقتحامها ودحر الأعداء خلال ساعات قليلة. بعد ذلك نجحنا التسلل إلى العمق وسيطرنا على التلال المشرفة على تدمر، ومنهدي هذا النصر إلى أمن سوريا.
Apparently, after the liberation of the city, the sense of relief was tangible. Some soldiers even started up a game of football right next to the battlefield. There's so far been little international reaction to the success of the Syrian military. NATO has declined to comment on the liberation of the ancient city. Just a few minutes ago, the Russian embassy in the UK posted a picture saying, "Keep calm and keep silent," apparently as a response to the lack of reaction to the victory in Palmyra. RT's Laura Smith has more.
The most interesting thing about the international reaction is that there hasn't been that much international reaction. Back in May 2015, when Palmyra was first taken by IS, there was a whole lot of hand-wringing about ancient artifacts and lost culture. But when just a few days ago, the spokesman for the US State Department was asked how he would feel if Palmyra was retaken, he wasn't particularly enthusiastic. Let's hear what he had to say.
We, of course, our priority, and I said this yesterday, is defeating and destroying Daesh. That remains our priority. And yet, we also recognize that replacing Daesh's barbaric rule with Assad's tyranny is not a great trade-off or a great solution.
So it seems the suggestion there is that even after all this, the US isn't fully behind defeating ISIL. What it really wants to do, in fact, is oust Assad, just what it's wanted to do all along. And so it follows that from David Cameron and from President Obama, absolutely nothing. And even the British media is asking why not. There's an article in The Independent today by Robert Fisk, their veteran Middle East correspondent. He says, here are the Syrian army, backed, of course, by Vladimir Putin's Ruskies, as he calls them, chucking the clowns of ISIS out of town, and we daren't utter a single word to say well done. Now, there are notable exceptions. Of course, there are always exceptions. We've heard from the former US ambassador to Russia. He responded to a tweet by the Russian embassy. He just wrote "spasibo," which of course means thank you in Russian. And then here in the UK, we've heard from the inimitable Boris Johnson, who's the former London mayor. He called the victory very much to the credit of the Russians. He said it made the West look relatively ineffective. Of course, everything happens for a reason. Boris is likely to have noticed Cameron's silence on the issue and wanted to distinguish himself by making this statement. He's setting up to be the next leader of the Conservative Party. But from world leaders, nothing.
Palmyra, known as the Venice of the Sands, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But Islamic State fighters have reduced a number of cultural landmarks to dust. We spoke to the man in charge of Syria's heritage and whose job it is now to restore what remains.
We cried so many times. We lost a lot of the hopes through the 2015. How we can accept all this destruction on the cultural heritage in Palmyra. But now it is the end of this tragedy. Now we have some joy. The first image coming from Palmyra, from National Museum, that the big a statue of Lat, it is good, it's under control, it's broken, it is not destroyed completely. The landscape in Palmyra is good, it's not destroyed. We are sure that Daesh do it a lot of destruction by illicit excavation in the city. I need to go with my staff tomorrow, after tomorrow, to Palmyra to do the damage assessment. We will share all the information with UNESCO because Palmyra, it's not just for the Syrian people, it's for the humanity. We need to give to terrorists new message, the message of the international community, how we can be strong together.
One of the largest museums in the world, Russia's Hermitage, has promised to help restore Palmyra to its pre-war state. The museum's director says winning the city back from the terrorists is not enough, and it's just as important to restore its beauty. The Hermitage in St. Petersburg itself may have more in common with Palmyra than first meets the eye.